In this lesson, we'll be discussing the basics of automaticity and how it relates to the information processing model and allows for more efficient student learning. And our objectives for this lesson are to examine the information processing model, which illustrates that if automaticity is absent, reading comprehension and higher level reading skills are not possible. And parts 2 and 3 of this unit will delve more into the assembly and automation theory and how this fits into an instructional hierarchy for students. So to illustrate how automaticity works, I'm going to ask you to not identify the symbol I'm about to display. So you saw the symbol of a letter A, and even if you tried not to identify that symbol, you can't suppress the identification of it. Even in this brief half second, you can't prevent yourself from automatically and unconsciously identifying that symbol. Now, at some point in our reading development, we saw these three lines in two-dimensional space, and we spent a lot of time and cognitive energy trying to determine which one of these is an A and which one is an N, and the sounds associated with each letter. But now, after sufficient repetition, we can't suppress the identification of these letters. We can also try this with more than just individual letters. You ready? If you're trying to suppress identification of words that have high frequency, you realize you can't control it. This is because you have established automaticity. And automaticity is the ability to competently perform a task without effort, engaging in the skill without any awareness. We have limited working memory resources, so in order for us to focus on higher level skills like reading comprehension, we need to free up resources in our working memory. And by identifying words automatically without being aware of it, you're then able to engage in those lower level skills with high levels of efficiency and in turn focus your energy on higher level skills. Now, we'll do another activity to give you an experience as to how a child may interact with written texts prior to establishing automaticity. And if you have a piece of paper in front of you, please create 8 lines. I'm going to present you with some stimuli, and then I'd like you to record them. Okay, we're going to begin. Remember not to write anything down while the stimuli are being presented. Just wait until after the stimuli have been presented in order to record them. Okay? All right, on the first line, write down the 2 letters you just saw. And then we'll go on to the next presentation. Remember, wait until after the stimuli have been presented to write them down. Okay, again, write down what you remember. And here's another one. Okay, now it's getting a little bit harder. Write it down. We're going to try and find another one with slightly more. Okay, go ahead and write that down. And if you're anything like many folks that have participated in activities like this, you're probably finding it a bit challenging to get all those letters down. So we're going to try another with just a few more letters. About ready? Now you may have noticed the first few I presented were for 3 seconds. The last one I just presented you was just 1 second, but my guess is that you did better with the last one than the previous ones. And let me present another even longer stimulus set. Ready? Now please record what you saw. Now here are the answers and the number of letters in each of the stimulus set up to 13. You can also see the number of letters recalled accurately by most people. Now here you see that when there are between 2 and 6 stimuli or units of information, people typically responded with 100% accuracy. But once we exceed about 7 units of information, accuracy starts to degrade rapidly. However, what you notice here is that when most people see the word impossibility, they can identify all 13 letters with 100% accuracy. Now, why is that? Well, when we're looking at letters that are not associated with each other or a word, then each of these letters presents a unique piece of information that you have to maintain in your working memory by itself. Think about the student who's still decoding words slowly. Those students are interacting with letters, words, phrases, or even entire sentences, treating many of the individual letters as unique pieces of information instead of chunking them. And as a child becomes more and more automatic, they begin to store known words in their mental lexicon, and those known words can then be identified as single units of information. So as you go up to 8 unique letters, this was overriding the amount of information we can maintain in our working memory. However, when we got to impossibility, this represented just a single unit of information that's stored in memory. And more so, this is displayed by the sentence, "The tragic accident claimed the life of 100 passengers who were aboard the airplane." Most people recalled this sentence with 72% accuracy, even with 84 units of information. And we can recall these units because we have automized basic skills and stored these chunks in our memory. So as we're reading the sentence, we don't store the tragic accident as 3 or more units of information. Instead, we'd store this meaning unit as one piece of information or one unit of information. As we're progressing through the sentence, we continue to store phrases as a few units of information and retain this in our working memory as meaning units instead of graphical or phonological units. So children move from initially learning to read by identifying the symbols on the page, often starting with letter sounds, to then graphical, to phonological, and then encapsulating entire words and sets of words as units of information associated with meaning. And as children progress toward this semantic level of storing and unitizing information, they become highly efficient readers with accurate comprehension and the capacity to engage in higher level reading skills. So we can put this all together in what we call the information processing model. And the model indicates that at any point in time, we have a tremendous amount of information that's bombarding our echoic sensory register and our iconic sensory register. In other words, what we're hearing and seeing. So it might be the sound of people shuffling papers or moving around in their seat or the color of the walls around you. But at any point in time, you're using your executive processor to pull in only the most relevant pieces of information, because if we didn't, we'd be constantly overwhelmed by the amount of stimuli in our environment. Now, a predominant theory associated with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder is related to deficits in the executive processor. And you can imagine the experience of some of our children with ADHD not being able to effectively filter the extraneous stimuli constantly hitting them. So we're using our executive processor to pull the most relevant information into our working memory, which is very constrained. And on the upper end, we estimate that you can hold 7 plus or minus 2 units of information for a maximum of about 20 seconds in your working memory. So if we go back and revisit our recall activity, when we're getting to a point of exceeding 5 or more units of information, we're no longer able to hold it in working memory, even though we're probably using memory tricks like rehearsing, that is trying to say the letters over and over in our mind. Our recall still degrades rapidly. Now think about the reader who's reading on the letter level or the word level. They're using those working memory resources in order to identify words and at the same time trying to remember what they've previously read. And by the time they get to the end of the sentence, all of that meaning is oftentimes gone, which provides no opportunity for reading comprehension at any broad level. So we really care about automaticity because it enables us to engage in those higher level skills. This isn't specific to reading either. Think about many complex tasks that you do in your everyday life. You may ride a bicycle, play an instrument, or driving on a familiar route home. We all have had the experience where we're close to home and we're in our own heads, and you don't even realize where you are because the route you've taken is so automatized that you're not allocating much of your working memory resources or even your consciousness to completing this task. So for each of these tasks, you can consider the required underlying automaticity that enables higher level skills to occur. Somebody who's not even at the professional level, but rather an amateur level of an activity like tennis, for example, needs to have automatized a large number of the basic skills associated with tennis play before they can professionally engage in a tennis match. So proficiency on many tasks are simply not possible without automatizing the underlying basic skills. So let's recap some of the important things to remember from this lesson. So first of all, working memory holds at most 7 plus or minus 2 units of information and for a maximum of about 20 seconds. So this information is degrading quickly. Second, it's much more efficient to hold meaning units and to read at this level than at the letter or word level. Next, students who read at the letter or subword level are squandering their cognitive resources that could be helping them with the higher level skills. So as we're thinking about providing supplemental services to students and we're trying to identify which skill we should target locally, we need to focus initially on basic skill deficits. Many of these skill deficits are indeed related to automaticity. And finally, remember that automaticity builds efficiency for cognitive resources that enable higher level skills such as reading comprehension, which is the ultimate goal in reading. In part 2 of this unit on automaticity, we'll discuss the assembly and automation theory. So thanks for watching this lesson on the foundations of automaticity, and be sure to check out the next video.